Hello and welcome to this episode of the Queen Bee podcast. Joining me today is the lovely Mel Kettle. Mel is an internationally recognised expert in leadership and communication with a significant interest in helping women and organisations better understand the impact of menopause in the workplace. She believes that we need to lead ourselves first before we can lead others. This view came after she survived the debilitating effects of work-related loneliness, stress, and also burnout in her late 20s, which was then reinforced when she had a life-threatening melanoma in her early 40s. Welcome, Mel.
Oh, thanks so much, Tanya. It's great to be here.
I'm really keen to jump into the topic of menopause at work. When I was managing staff and even when I was in the workplace, this wasn't something that ever came up, and it certainly wasn't anything that I thought about. Can you share with us why we need to be opening up these conversations and actually becoming proactive in how we support within the workplace?
One thing that I think a lot of people don't realise is that roughly 20% of the workforce is currently going through perimenopause or menopause, and that has massive impact on so many elements of work. One of my clients I was working with said to me they did the math and worked out the numbers in their workplace and realised it was 47% of their workforce was going through menopause, because the majority of their workforce was made up of women in their 40s and early 50s. So one of the things I say to my clients and my colleagues and pretty much anybody I ever speak to about this is, if you have women in your workforce who are in their 40s, chances are they're starting to experience symptoms of menopause. And so you need to be aware of that, and you need to be asking them what you can do to provide them with the necessary support as they go through this phase of life.
And I guess part of that as well is they may not actually know that's what's happening to them, because I know, all the other conversations we have, we don't necessarily know when it starts.
Absolutely. Most women don't know when it starts. My personal experience, I had no idea what was happening to me. My menopause symptoms started to show themselves in my early 40s, and I thought I had early onset dementia because I was forgetful. I couldn't remember simple things that I really should know. And it was a really frightening, terrifying, scary time. And it wasn't until I did a lot of my own research, because this was 10 years ago where there wasn't much information out there about menopause. I did some research and I discovered that forgetfulness was a symptom, one of the many, many symptoms of menopause.
So in terms of the workplace, what are some of the things that we can be doing?
The first thing you need to do if you're leading women or managing women is you need to understand that they are probably going through symptoms of menopause and may not know themselves what they're going through, but think about what is it that you can be doing to provide support. And, I ran a workshop a while ago for an organisation that was mostly male, and the women in the organisation that were going through it wanted to find out more and educate their colleagues about it. And there was a guy that was on the call who said, "Why are we talking about this? Everybody's got their stuff." And yes, everybody does have their stuff. And one of the things that I've discovered is that by being more open about menopause and having conversations about how we can provide support for women going through it, it's also opening up conversations in workplaces about how we can be supporting people going through a whole lot of other stuff as well. So the easiest way to figure out what you can be doing to support your people who are going through stuff, whether it's menopause or something else, is to ask them. Find out what they need, find out what they want. Questions we should be asking our staff and our direct reports on a regular basis, regardless, include things like, how can I help you be better at your job? Is there anything that you need to do your job in a different way? Is there anything that you need from us as an employer to make your job easier? And these questions aren't asked anywhere near often enough for everybody, let alone for women who are going through menopause and perimenopause.
Yeah, and I can imagine for some people, I'm thinking, we've got very diverse spectrum in terms of how people manage and how they act in the workplace. On one hand, we've probably got those that may be going through the process of saying, can I help you? Because of their relationship or the way that they ask, people aren't feeling safe to share those things. I know from way back when I was doing recruiting, for a role that I had, I can remember one of the guys who was on the recruitment team saying, oh, well, we don't really want someone that age because they'll probably get pregnant, as in a woman. So we don't want that either with menopause, where it's, okay, well, they're, over 40, they're probably going to get this menopause thing and then they'll be useless and we don't want them anyway. So maybe we just hire men all the time or something.
That's definitely a risk, and that's something I've been thinking a lot about lately and thinking, how do we circumvent that from happening? And I don't have any answers. I don't know, other than, women supporting women. So I feel like our generation, like I'm a Gen X woman, we're so much more prepared to talk about what's happening to us, both physically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually, than any other generation that came before us. And so I feel like we need to be supporting each other and standing together and just making people aware. You can't just not hire women. That's not going to work because you won't have enough people to do the jobs and to keep the company's doors open if you just stop hiring women who are in their 40s and 50s.
And as that Mel in your session said, everyone's got their share. If we start excluding everyone who might have something, we end up with no one.
Oh, exactly. And I really feel that workplaces today need to be so much more aware of what people are going through so that they can provide the relevant support. And whether that's a young parent or a new parent with a young child at home, or whether it's somebody who's caring for aging parents, or whether it's someone who is dealing with a medical diagnosis or mental health issues or ADHD, or, there's so many things that happen in our world, whether they've got a new pet at home and they're not sleeping because the dog keeps them awake all night. There's loads of things that happen. And the more we can understand who we are spending our work days with, whether we're the boss or not, the more likely we are to understand what they're going through and be caring. But the more you know what's going on, then the more you can be providing support. And support doesn't need to be something overt. It can just be understanding and not, maybe not snapping at them when they say something that's out of place or out of turn. Or it might be something as simple as, you're going to get a coffee, asking your colleague if they would like you to get one as well.
Yeah.
And being, it's about being more human. How do you show your more human side at work, regardless of where you're at work? Regardless of what's going on in your life.
Yeah, and I think also avoiding it being that tick box process. Like, I think of Are You OK Day, where you get a little Are You OK card and a chocolate on your desk, and that's somehow representing the values and what Are You OK Day is supposed to be all about. What we don't want is, the token fan on everyone's desk. Or what are the other things that you might have seen where there might be positive intention behind it, but it's not really coming across in a helpful way?
There's a lot of organisations that I've run a single workshop or lunch and learn with around why we need to be talking about menopause in the workplace, and then they've done nothing else.
Yeah.
So if you're really serious about it, you need to be embedding menopause issues into your health and safety, workplace health and safety programs. And just as you would be embedding other things in your programs, like one of the best things I reckon that has happened for women who are experiencing the symptoms of menopause is working from home. And so how do we have that greater flexibility? But thinking about as well, what are the things in your workplace that could have a negative impact on your female staff who are going through this, or your staff who are going through this? And it's not just things like is the air conditioning not the right temperature? But think about, if your staff wear a uniform, what's the fabric of the uniform? What does the uniform look like? Is it tight? Is it loose? I look at, my husband works for a supermarket and he's got a polyester. He used to have a polyester shirt. That was unpleasant in Queensland anyway, let alone if you've got hot sweats and hot flushes going on all day. The last thing you want to be wearing is polyester. And so think about it from every aspect that you're expecting, or that you have in your workplace, that people need to be doing for that to do their jobs properly. And again, it always comes back to asking, listening, and observing. How do you, if you genuinely want to know what's happening to the women in your workplace, they're the three things you need to be doing.
Yeah, and I think you really touched on an interesting point there. It is about respecting people as human beings. And, no one goes to work to bunk off. I mean, they might because they're so disengaged, but generally people go because they want to actually make a difference. They want to have meaning in their life. They want to do a good job. But often what happens, and I've seen this a lot particularly in call center type scenarios or even a lot of customer service type situations where they've got to ask permission to go to the toilet. I'm sorry, but if I need to go to the toilet a lot because there's things going on, that's really, really unpleasant. And you feel like you're judged. I've seen where they're timed how long they've been at the toilet. So a lot of it's this trust and this mindset thing of, these are genuine people who we need to trust so they can give us their best.
Absolutely. Everything in the workplace comes back to relationships, and relationships only work if there's trust. And so how do you do that? What do you need to be doing in your workplace to ensure that there's a two-way level of trust between you and the other people in your workplace? How do you do that? What are some of the things you need to be doing? Well, one of the things you can be doing is sharing your own stories. And sharing some of your vulnerability and sharing some of your authenticity. And the second thing is listen. How do you listen? Do you listen? When someone's telling you something that's going on in their life, are you only listening to the words, or are you actually listening to what they are saying through their tone of voice or their body language, or not making eye contact with you?
Yeah, and I know you do a lot of this in the speaking engagements that you do, but it's about that working together as humans. And I know I've been guilty of it in the past, where you are so focused on the task you need to deliver that you're not spending that time with the people, but then you're not getting the best out of them either, I would imagine.
Exactly. I know I've worked for women and for men who have been very task focused to the point of excluding or not understanding the importance of the people. And if you're in a leadership role, or you aspire to be in a leadership role, then it's really important that you understand how people tick and how people work, and what it is that you need to be doing in order to earn the trust of the people that you're wanting to work with. And it's not just the trust of your staff and your colleagues, but it's the trust of your customers, the people that provide other services to your organisation, the people in your community, because that is what will help make your organisation more successful.
I'm interested, you went through quite a huge journey in terms of, you had a melanoma. It was probably very similar to the time that you were starting to go through perimenopause. What was going on there for you? Because I imagine that would have been huge.
I didn't actually realise my melanoma could have killed me until after. Oh, talk about blissful ignorance. So I started going through menopause when I was in my early 40s, and my melanoma was diagnosed in when I was 43. And that came about because I had a spot on my leg that it was a freckle that I'd had since I was a teenager. And I looked at it one morning when I was sitting on the toilet, because it was, right on top of my thigh, and thought, that doesn't look like it looked the other day. I'm sure that's not the same as it was the other day. And so I looked at it again and I thought, oh, look, I've just been to the doctors. I've just had my skin looked at. It was fine. I'll just wait. And that night I had a dream that I died from melanoma because I didn't go to the doctors in time. So you can guarantee that I was on the phone the moment my doctor's surgery opened that day. And sure enough, it was a level 2 melanoma, and it was removed within a week of me having that dream. The surgeon who removed it, when I went back for a post-surgical visit, he said to me, or I said to him, thanks so much for taking it out so quickly. I was his last patient before Christmas. He said if I'd waited till after Christmas, you'd probably not see another one.
Wow.
And it was very, he said it was a very aggressive melanoma, and it was just, it was a huge shock. I never really equated that as happening at the same time as I was going through perimenopause, but it did. One of the symptoms, or probably the worst symptom for me, that happened when I was going through menopause or perimenopause was anxiety. And looking back, I'm really grateful for that, because if I hadn't had that deep level of anxiety that was very unlike me, I probably would have been a lot more blasé about that spot on my leg. And one of the things that I think that a lot of people underestimate or don't understand about the symptoms of menopause, we all know about hot flushes and night sweats. What we don't know is about the mental symptoms. For me, it was huge brain fog. It was extreme anxiety. My husband at the time worked about an hour's drive away from where we lived, and he would text me and say, I'm heading home now. If he was even 5 minutes later than he should have been, I just assumed he was dead in a ditch.
Yeah.
That is not normal. That is so not normal. And because it was 10 years ago, there wasn't much information. And so it was really difficult. And my doctor didn't think I was old enough to be going through menopause. So I was just kind of struggling through on my own. Now there's so much more information, there's so many more resources, there are so many more people talking about it. There's brilliant books, there's podcasts like this one where people are much more willing to also share their experiences. And so I feel that for women who are younger women and women from our generation who are just starting to experience it, they've got so many more places to turn to get help. And I'm really grateful for that, for them.
Yeah. So what was the turning point for you? Because I mean, I know I also had a lot of that anxiety. And it's funny that you mentioned about you assumed that your husband would be dead in a ditch. Because I have to admit, I also had that. And I never actually equated that with my anxiety. I actually had that as a very separate thing in my head. That was about something completely different.
Same. I didn't equate it with menopause for a long time because I didn't know that that was a symptom. What was the turning point for me? I was having a lot of gut health issues, and whether that was related or not, I don't know. But I saw a naturopath, and I did a really quite a hardcore elimination diet to get to the root of some of my gut health problems, and it was like a reset. And so it was a 14-week, might have been a 16-week gut health elimination where I eliminated, under her supervision, alcohol, sugar, caffeine, wheat, dairy, tomatoes, citrus, nuts, seafood, and a whole bunch. Like, there were about 12 or 14 things that we eliminated, and then brought one back at a time over a period of 3 months. And it was like my body just reset. You know, when you turn off your computer and it fixes all the problems, that helped. A lot of my physical symptoms went away, and a lot of my mental symptoms went away. So I don't necessarily recommend that for everyone, but if you are going to do it, then do it under the guidance of a medical professional or a healthcare professional.
Yeah.
But that was sort of a turning point for me. So I did that probably when I was about 46, 47. I've been postmenopausal since I was 48. So I went through menopause early. Most women go through it in their early 50s. I think 52 is the average in Australia. So that made a massive difference for me. But whether or not that was what made the difference, or whether I was just coming to the end of my reproductive life, I don't know. It all just kind of happened at the same time.
And were you working at the time when all this was happening?
Oh, so I had my own business. I've been in business for 18 years, and so I was working for myself. And I'm really grateful that I was, because it meant that I had far more control over how I spent my time and what I did with my day than a lot of other people do at that time. So I know I lost business during that time because I'd go to meetings with men and I'd just be dripping with sweat, which was highly embarrassing, but that's just a part of it. But the thing that was good for me is because I worked for myself, I wasn't getting much sleep during those years, and it meant that I had time to have a sleep every afternoon. I could have a nap. I could get up a bit later. I had more control over what I ate, what I drank, what I wore when I faced people. I'd been working online for a long time because I was working for myself, and a lot of my clients I did, my clients were based around Australia, and so we did a few face-to-face things, but general conversations and general meetings were always held online or over the phone. And that made a massive difference because they didn't have to see me in all of my perimenopausal glory. I think the other thing that I was always really happy to do, though, like I talked about it a lot. And so I always, whenever I was having a hot flash or if I was with a client, particularly a client who I trusted, I would just make a menopausal joke about it. I think my worst experience was when I was on stage giving a keynote at quite a big conference and I just got halfway through a sentence and forgot what the second half of the sentence had to be. And that was very embarrassing, but I managed to, I walked over to the lectern, had a sip of water, looked at my notes and made a joke about menobrain. And fortunately for me, the majority of the audience were women in their 40s and 50s, and they got it and they laughed. These are things that happen that we need to show care when this happens to other women, because it could easily happen to you if it hasn't already.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's all the questions that I've got for you, Mel. Would you like to share some of the things that you're currently working on and also about the books that you have? Because I know I'm really keen to start reading one.
Oh, thanks so much. So these days I do quite a bit of work with organisations to help them understand why they need to be talking about menopause in the workplace. And if you need support in developing a program, I can either help you with that or I can point you in the direction of a whole heap of free resources. One of the great things about going through menopause today, whether you're going through it or you're wanting to support other people, is there is just so much information out there. There's fantastic books, there's fantastic other resources that you can access. There's a set of resources on my website that you're welcome to download. It's just go to melkettle.com/menopause. And some of my favourite resources are in there. Other things I'm doing at the moment, I work a lot around self-leadership and communication. My background is 25 years of marketing communication, probably closer to 30 years now. How did that happen? And so I work a lot with leaders and teams to help them understand how they can communicate to create real connection and sustained engagement in their workplaces. I run individual programs online. My next round of my Thriving Leaders program starts in August. And I do a lot of work in-house. So very happy to chat if there's something that you'd like more information about. Or you can go to my website, melkettle.com.
Awesome. And we'll also have links on our description area for the episode so people can connect in or find your resources. And we'll also have some on the queenbee.com.au site as well.
Fantastic. And I've just realised I didn't even mention my book. If you're watching the video,
Yes.
You can see it behind me. I've written 2 books, and the second one is called Fully Connected. It's about how leaders can lead themselves first so that you can have more energy and more joy in your life.
Which is, I think, pretty much what we've been talking about today, is that human element, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Well, thank you. Today we've been yarning with Mel Kettle, who is an internationally recognised thought leader on fully connected leadership and communication. She's a coach and mentor, guest speaker, podcast host, and an author with an Amazon #1 bestseller award for the book she just mentioned, Fully Connected. We will have all the links, as I mentioned, on our episode description. And thank you so much for joining me today, Mel.
Thanks so much, Tanya, and thanks for listening.